So what is sex, right? How do we do it, right? How does this work, right? How does this play? And let's feel into it. Sex is, my friends, right, the great mystery of our lives. And there are two very different approaches, right, to how we understand sex. The first approach we might call the moralists. And the moralists are a powerful group in culture that live in us. All of these groups live in us, and they tell us that somehow sex is wrong or only right in very particular limited context, in a particular form of marriage, sacramented or sanctified in a particular way. But essentially, right, that's just a condescension, right, a kind of compromise with reality, because actually at its core there's something immoral about this kind of pleasure that expands you in this kind of way, which takes you away from the true serious issues of life. And these forces are really potent. And even when we think we've gotten free of them and they've got nothing to do with us, they kind of pop up again inside our hearts or heads, wagging their fingers disapprovingly. And of course, they remind us all the time of all the trouble that sex has gotten the world into and all the trouble that sex has gotten you into. I mean, we went to war in the United States at the last part of the 20th century with Iraq in large measure because the president at the time, Bill Clinton, right, had a brief affair with Monica Lewinsky. How did that cause us to go to war? Well, it caused us to go to war because the entire country, right, was following every detail, right, every sexual detail, right, of that exchange, right, and it made front page every single day for 2.5 years, more than major earthquakes, famines, issues in education, right, huge issues happening in the world were on page 10. This was in page 1, because this was the place that people could kind of be in a voyeur status and move beyond their own internal shame by actually shaming the president. Right? They projected their shame outwards onto the president. When it became time for Al Gore in the late 20th century to run for president, right, Bill Clinton, right, who was the president at the time, Al Gore was vice president, couldn't campaign for him because of the Lewinsky issue. He was too controversial. Gore lost the presidency. Right, George Bush was elected and made a series of decisions that led to the war in Iraq. Now, why am I mentioning that? It doesn't matter whether you're a Bush Republican or you're a Clinton Democrat at the end of the 20th century. The point is that our decision about war in Iraq shouldn't have anything to do with Bill Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky and what kind of oral sex he had or didn't have. Right? That's the problem. And the problem is not, Clinton or Bush. The problem is, why are we completely fixated, right, on the particular details of this relationship, right, between these two people, right? And the answer is, and it's very, very powerful, right? The answer is because we're projecting our shame outward, right? And we've got to actually move beyond that. So the first group of people, right, that approach sex are the moralists, and lots of organized religion, right, and conventional moralists and myth makers kind of fall into this category. And we've got to first move beyond that. And I want to bring the words of the great Zen monk, Q, in the 14th century, right, bring him to bear to respond to that first voice of shame, which is the voice of the moralists, right, of, much of organized religion. So Ikkyu writes, with a young beauty, sporting in deep love play, we sit in the pavilion, a pleasure girl and this Zen monk, enraptured by hugs and kisses. I certainly don't feel as if I'm burning in hell. That's the first coalition, and Ikkyu's beautiful response to that first coalition responding to sex, which is the moralists. Then there's a second group, and the second group are all kind of liberal secular, right? And they say, oh, sex is wonderful. If it's liberated, it's the panacea of all ills. If repressed, it's the source of all dysfunction, right? And they say that sex is, completely neutral, right? It's, like any other bodily function. Kinsey, right, the great sex researcher Kinsey was a leader of this school, right? Sex is just like eating, right, or going to the bathroom, right? There's nothing special about it, nothing unique about it. And, if you can just kind of balance the sexual tension in your body and release it in a balanced way, you'll be healthy and happy. That's the second view. We're going to call that view the view of the libertines, right? There's nothing special going on in the sex thing. Don't know what everybody was so excited about to start with. Just relax, everyone, right? Create a little, hydraulic balance in your psyche, right? And you're going to be okay. And Freud was a major cheerleader, in this particular view of sexuality. So we're going to call this the libertines and the moralists, kind of two, core schools. But of course, neither of them take the day. I mean, let's look at the kind of sexual revolution. The sexual revolution's over, and yet we're still looking for a deep relationship to sexuality. Uninhibited sex, is ostensibly available in an infinite variety in almost every imaginable social or commercial context, and we don't quite seem any the better for it. There's so much sex and so little pleasure, so many orgasms and so little satisfaction. A few decades back, there was a sociologist, my friends, named David Reisman, and he called sex the final frontier. Well, if that's true, my friends, we've crossed it and found it wanting. Now, psychologists rarely report today that patients complain about sexual dysfunction or repression. That was the big complaint in the days of Freud. It's more like the malaise of our time is the lack of feeling or passion, or aliveness, or the disconnect between sex and spirit or sex and meaning. Sex is all around, it's every place, but it's kind of hard to tell whether anyone's truly enhanced by it. No one even seems to be really enjoying themselves in a sustained way. So these two approaches, the moralists and libertines, each in their respective worlds can be spiritually and politically correct, but they just don't address our deepest knowings and yearnings. And so in this first week, we want to set up a larger metaframe. We want to shift our worldview. We want to get out of prison by changing our prison. So we want to turn to the hidden wisdom, what we might call the wisdom of spiritually incorrect. And this wisdom lives in the esoteric places, the secret places of the great traditions, and it also lives in the emergent evolutionary understanding, that's now coming together at the leading edge of intuition and understanding in the world today. In the old world, you had people like Ikkyu, who I just cited in the Zen tradition, the tantric masters of Hinduism and Buddhism, Rumi and Hafiz in Sufism, the Mary Magdalene school in Christianity, the heretical Cathars of mystical Christianity, some of the great secrets of the Kabbalah. And as we bring those hidden secret traditions together with new knowledge that emerges in this generation, that we've experienced, Annie and I, in our own lives, in our own processes of realization, we're going to bring together and share with you this new evolution of love, evolution of sexuality, which offers a new prism, a new worldview, what we think is the best framework available for really understanding what sexuality is all about and how we can live it fully in our lives.